Welcome to Breaking the Cycle to Step Forward podcast with me, Beverley Ann, and
Chris Tuck. Hi, everyone. So we're delivering this podcast from our personal lived experiences as well as our professional perspectives. So it's going to be an interesting conversation, Beverley.
Absolutely. But what's really interesting about this one is we're talking about boundaries, which is a real lovely follow-on from podcast number 3, which was talking about relationship with self and tapping into what's important for ourselves, because we need to know that. And some people might say what our values are, but if we know what's important to us, then we're able to make choices going forward and put our boundaries into place.
So I looked up the word boundary on the internet just to get, a more defined definition. And it actually said, boundaries help you define what you are comfortable with and how you would like to be treated by others. So for me, a boundary for me are my rules, how I will treat people and how I want to be treated. And it's taken me a lifetime to learn that. And, victim and survivors, individuals that we work with, because they're not all victim and survivors, struggle with boundaries. They don't know what they are. And again, we can talk about that in a moment. They don't know what they are. They don't know how to implement them. And they don't know how important they are to define relationships. So do you want to touch upon all of that, some of that?
Yeah. I think what you're saying about boundaries is really great, and we all have different words, and that's why I love this conversation, because we use different language. So another part from that would be respect in my language, and I also see it as it's a place for other people to know this is the line, but it's also a place for us to think, okay, what am I happy with? What do I feel safe with? So that we can put a natural protective barrier around us, which can change in different environments. So if it's on a one-to-one relationship, it'll be different to if we're in a group environment.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll also be different with our own experiences. So if as a child growing up, and we are going back to childhood at the moment, because, that's where we learn these boundaries.
Or should.
Yeah. And that's one of the few examples of should that I actually enjoy, because normally should is expectations of others. So I try not to use that. But the great thing about having this discussion is, for some people, they will actually go ping, ping, ping. But I would just want to say before we start talking, please don't be harsh on yourself, because as you said, you've been learning, I'm learning, we're always learning. And without that learning, how do we know? So as a child, when we've come from abuse, whether it be emotional, whether it be physical or sexual, when we've been bullied, our boundaries have been shot to pieces. So people have overstepped, and sometimes we've been unable to set our boundaries and verbalize that back and say, no, enough, or take ourselves away. So I just want to get that bit clear, because that's how we learn. And when we know what it's like not to have our boundaries, we tend to respect other people's boundaries more, because we know how it feels when our boundaries are crashed.
Yeah. Can I just go back, though, just one step? Being a child in a happy, healthy, caring, loving, nurturing home, and you're going to hear us say that a lot.
Yes.
The rules, the boundaries, be kind to others, share your toys, all of that learning that goes on in that kind of environment, you just grow up naturally knowing and feeling what a boundary is like. But when you're not brought up in that environment, where you're being harmed from the different abuses, maybe on a daily basis or a regular basis, those boundaries, those normal natural learning is trashed, as you were, I'm going to use your word, is trashed, are trashed. So you're almost like boundaries, rules, your expectations, or your natural learning of boundary, not being harmed, to be respected, to be loved. That all comes naturally if it's a loving environment, but if it's not, all of that is gone. So you can see quite clearly how individuals, when they grow up, if they've grown up in a harmful environment, what is a boundary? And it's almost like you give over to people that are more powerful to you, people that are more outspoken, people that demand more of you. You give over all of that to those individuals because you don't know how to put that in place for yourself, and you don't know actually that you should, again, a word you don't like, but you should be able to expect that for self.
Yes, absolutely. And isn't it funny how you keep saying the word boundaries and rules?
Yeah.
Because to me, when somebody says rules, even as a child growing up, rule to me meant I had no choice. I had no voice.
Yeah.
You must do this. And sometimes as a young person, even if you come from a really loving environment, as a young child, when you say why, because I said so, because I'm the adult, you're the child.
Yeah.
So we are getting different messages, even in loving environments, you know, when you go to school, because that's what everybody else does.
Yeah.
Even if you don't feel that it's right for you. So for me, rule and boundaries sometimes felt like you're taking away my choice.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I actually like to think of it the other way. Okay, I didn't like it when you were taking away my choice. I now want to have the choice. And that is a hard thing to learn, how to make the choices again, or know that we have that right.
We're going to be having a lot of to and from here.
Yeah.
But it's good because other people will be, you know, exploring the same situation. Children don't know any different, do they? We don't know. As a child, we don't know any different. So as an adult that's trying to teach a child, and I mean teach in a positive, beneficial way, it's about actually showing that child that, again, a boundary, a rule, a guideline, when they're growing up, children don't really get to choose a boundary or rule, especially if it's safety. So for example, don't touch the fire. Yeah, that will be a rule because you don't want a child touching that fire because you know it's going to harm them. Whereas another boundary or rule could be, actually, you can enjoy a treat, whatever that may be. You can go to, if you be good, you can choose a cinema, or you can choose to go to the sweet, whatever it is, you can choose. So it's almost like as a loving, caring parent, caregiver, you are showing the child that there are some boundaries, rules that cannot be broken because of, you don't want no harm coming to them. But in other areas, you can give them a choice. So you can show them both.
Yeah. And this is where, though, I still believe we can set boundaries and rules, but we can explain the outcome. So they're still making a choice. So for instance, you know, that fire being hot.
Yeah.
Don't touch the fire because it's really hot. If you touch it, it will burn you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
but again, the child may not understand what burn means because they've never been burnt.
No. And that's where before anyone thinks worse of me, I'm gonna share something I did at parenting. So I always wanted to try and give my children as much choice as possible growing up. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm the perfect parent.
No, because none of us are.
So, but my intention as a parent was to do the best that I possibly could for them. So if it was about the fire, I would actually put their hand closer to the fire so they can feel
the heat.
It's hot.
Ouch. Yeah.
If you touch it any further, it will be really hot and it will hurt.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So they have an understanding, but a bit like clothes. So, you know, my son at 2 was very aware of what he wanted to do and what he wanted to wear clothes-wise. And as a parent, you know they're all washed and hung up and all the rest of it. So what I would do is bring out 2 outfits and say, what would you like to wear today? So there's a boundary, because I don't want him going through the wardrobe and pulling everything out.
Yeah.
But we've also got a time. The reality
Yeah.
is, you know, we've got to get out for some reason, work.
Yeah.
Or
And
whatever.
you need a fully clothed child because it's cold outside.
Absolutely. But I'm still enabling him to have choice within a boundary. Do you see what I mean? So,
yeah, I know exactly what you mean, but there's lots of parents out there that don't do this. It's their way or the highway.
absolutely. But see, I learned that way. And I didn't want that. So this is where sometimes the bad, for anyone listening, because the one thing I really resented growing up, especially as a teenager, was if you've learned this way, you're going to carry it forward. And this is all about breaking the cycle.
Yes.
And even then I wanted to break the cycle. And as we've said before, even when we have our best intentions, we've got to find the balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Too much, and we create the cycle in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, parenthood is about learning. It's about evolving. It's about being flexible. And it's about learning from the fact that no one gives you a manual when you're a parent. You are almost like day by day learning yourself that these little human beings are your responsibility, and you need to bring them up in a way that they can go out into the world, protect themselves, and treat others like they want to be treated. But we know that as adults who we work with, that the boundaries, the rules, the guidelines, whatever words you want to use, that's just not there for them, and they don't understand how to implement that for themselves, and they also then struggle with their children. So
absolutely,
as an adult and as an expert in your work, how would you work with an individual who struggles with boundaries, that struggles with self, i.e. they let people take too much from them because they don't know how to put those boundaries in place? What if I was your client right now, Beverley, what would you say to me? How would you work with me to put those things in place? Because people do struggle.
Absolutely, all the time. So last week, in our last podcast, your key values or key words about loving yourself was trust, love, and support.
You remembered. I'm impressed.
So I would encourage you to write those down, so that every single time you're, you know, and I'd want you to put them on note sticks at all different places.
Post-it notes.
Post-it notes. But so whatever works for you and wherever, so that you're constantly seeing those. Because then when you're thinking about what's right for you, so give me an example. Give me an example of something about boundaries.
What, someone overstepping? And again, this might be because I've not communicated my boundary. But before, I used to just give to anybody and everybody. So if a message landed in my inbox, it don't matter what time of day or night it was, I must help that person.
Okay.
But then in the end, I got so exhausted, so tired, and I felt an obligation. There's something in me, there's an obligation to help. But then it was impacting me.
Absolutely. So that message comes into your box late at night, and it's important that you acknowledge. But like you say, you will giving, and what it does is drain from you.
Yeah.
So then what I do is I would encourage you to think about what options you have that would enable you to give yourself the love that you need and support yourself that you need at that time of night, but also acknowledge the others. So we'd look at what options were available, and we're going to cut through all of that.
Yeah.
So, for instance, you know that you want to sleep through the night and have a good night's sleep to enable you to carry on for the next day. Because if you're in the best place, you can continue to support each other.
Yeah.
However, you also want that person to be acknowledged. So one of the things that we'd be looking, one of the possible options, and this wouldn't be me telling you, this would be through your choices, would be to have a message on your email, for instance, if they're contacting you for email, that has, you know, thank you for your message, I'm here for you, you know, and think about the wording that was on it, and I will contact you tomorrow at between this time.
Yeah.
Because that way you're acknowledging that person. There is only so much you can do. You can maybe give them a helpline for others, but then you've let them know, I will come back to you. So you've given a boundary.
And of course, I've got that in place now for myself. And then everybody knows where they stand. And also, you can come back to it with fresh eyes as well, because you've got more energy, as you said. Now, let's just take that example and extrapolate it a little bit to a mum, for example, which we both are, but to a mum that's, you know, she's got a job, she's caring for someone in the family, she's maybe broken up in a relationship, and that's sort of a bit messy, but she's living on her own, and she's got children that are quite demanding. So she's got all of these demands on her, but she's feeling drained. It could be a dad, the person, the caregiver, they're feeling drained. Everybody's taking, and she doesn't know how to put boundaries in place. What would you do in that kind of situation?
Again, I'd bring it really, really simple, because there would be lots I'd want to do, but it's not about what I want. It's about making it so that it's simple and it can be implemented and learned at the smallest point to enable that person then to understand it and grow with it. Because you and I didn't get where we are today just because someone said, oh, do that. And you go, oh yeah, got that. So I'd ask them, you know, before the day starts, what time do you get up? And what's the first thoughts that go through your mind? Because that way you're getting someone to check in with themselves. And it's something I do every single morning when I wake up. I check in with myself, and I find that really important. It's scary, and I sort of can hear people saying, oh, I can't do that, can't do that. But actually check in. How am I feeling? Am I feeling tired? Am I feeling lethargic? Am I like, oh, I can't do this day? Because it's already heavy. So when you're in that place, what one thing can you do for yourself that gives you, 5 minutes that is yours? Now, this is something we speak about a lot of the time. So, having a drink, whether it be a hot drink, a cold drink, in a cup or a glass that you like, where do you want to sit and have that drink? Well, actually, I like sitting outside sometimes, but I just sit by the kitchen. Is there any reason why you can't sit outside sometimes? Well, I suppose sometimes I can sit in the shed if it's raining. Oh, what do you like about the shed?
Or the rain.
Yeah. So often we have these little things, but we think, oh, I'm so busy with the day that I can't have 5 minutes. But give yourself that 5 minutes, because that 5 minutes, if you get up, check in with yourself, make your drink, and then go and sit outside for 5 minutes, drinking your tea before everyone's up, really does help you think about self. And
it's almost giving back to yourself as well, isn't it? It's giving yourself that little bit of investment, that little bit of acknowledgement, and that little bit of, no, you are important.
Yes.
Even if everybody else is taking and they're not validating you, you're validating yourself.
Absolutely. So you're starting that journey, and it will at first, at first, then the days will go back how they have been going back. But in time, with support and the correct support and learning, that 5 minutes will be there. Then there'll be another 5 minutes later in the day. But then it gives you time to think and take a stop. Hold on, where am I? What's happening here? Because
how can I get that 5 minutes? always about how can I get that 5 minutes, putting your own oxygen mask on so that you can carry on with whatever's going on in your life.
Yeah, yeah. Because when we're able to slow down a bit, then it also takes away, because one of the things that we're trying to do always is keep on control of everything.
Yeah.
The more stressed and overwhelmed we become, the more we want to keep control. And the less likely we are able to, because we just get busier and busier and busier. And we actually get caught up into that hurricane. And so our boundaries, they're not there. And if we're unable to find 5 minutes for ourselves and put our own boundary in, it comes back to that. How can we expect people to respect our boundary?
Yeah. And I think also as well, if you've got a lot of demands on your time because of children or elderly parents or whatever it is, that you're still dealing with trauma, it's like today, for example, I'm trying to throw as many examples in as possible. I've got EMDR this afternoon, so I'm busy up till then, and then afterwards I'm not busy, because I've had to put the boundary in place that I need that processing time and I need that self-care, that help time. Last week, that boundary was broken by an outside external thing that was happening, and I allowed it. And I shouldn't have done. I should have just said, you know what? No, I can't, because it's therapy. I need that processing time. So this week, it's just like, no, it's not going to happen. No matter what happens, it's not happening. Yeah. But again, you've got to be quite strong to put any boundary in place like that. And some people that are in unhealthy, toxic relationships, they find it really hard to do that. They struggle with that. But again, it is knowing that you are allowed, you have the choice to put those boundaries in place, and you have the right for that boundary to be respected. But that is all learning, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's why I say, coming back to that one thing, a drink, because drink's very important for you. So what you're doing, you're actually doing several things. You're nurturing yourself because you're giving yourself a drink. You're taking some time to actually, think about your environment where you're having that drink. And that sounds really important. And we dismiss that so much. But when we know that we're going to have this battlefield around us, because let's be frank, sometimes it feels like a battlefield, especially when you're, you're dealing with your own trauma and your head's full of everything, your body's trying to talk to you as well, and it's aching and it's really tired, and you've got to find this exhaustion. Being in a nice environment that you've chosen to go and sit in, wherever that be, if it's in the garden shed because it's raining, if it's in the garden, if it's in the kitchen, if there's a favorite chair, if it's in bed, that's so important.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's small, but it's not, because the next thing that I ask anyone to do when they're doing that is, as they're doing it, think about what they're drinking, taste it, smell it.
Yeah.
What can you see? What can you hear? How does it feel?
Yeah. Especially how does your body feel, because when we're rushing around and we're highly stressed, shoulders are up, tensions in the body. And as you said, just taking that 5 minutes in that safe space for you, whatever that is, you can just go. And
when we are able to actually tap into how it feels, and like you say, the shoulders, I mean, I remember years ago going to Pilates. I live my life like this.
Relax your shoulders, I say to my clients, just relax.
And I'd be like, I am. Oh.
Yeah.
Now my neck feels like it's even long because my head feels so far away from my shoulders. But for years it was like that, and I wondered why I had shoulder problem. But and we're not laughing at anyone, we're laughing because we've been there.
Been there, done that, and still do it.
So having that cup really makes a difference, or glass, or just 5 minutes, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And once you've been able to do the 5 minutes and feel it, then you can do it another time. and another time, and you want to do it more for yourself.
Yeah.
When you're ready to learn, and that's the difference.
Yeah.
Because learning about boundaries is about learning about ourselves.
Yeah.
If we're not ready to learn, we won't want to do this.
Yeah. But
For anyone
often,
listening.
yeah. And again, I
anyone,
often, you go.
anyone listening, you know, I really would like to say, start really, really small.
Yeah.
Because it's valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. But also just recognize and hear that you have a right as a human being, as an individual, as, I'm going to say child, adolescent, but especially as an adult, you have a right to be respected, to be loved, to be nurtured, to be cared for. But it starts with self, and you might have to learn how to do that. And then when you know exactly what it is you're comfortable with, what you will accept, what you won't accept in a relationship with self, with parent, caregiver, with your children, with your other half, with your friends, whatever it is, whatever that relationship is, how do you treat people? How do you want to be treated? And putting that into practice. And if there is something that doesn't feel right for you, look at how you can change that. Do you want to change it, or do you want to get rid of that relationship?
And that, you know what, we hear so much around us when we're growing up, and not all of it is bad. So no matter how, you know, daunting my childhood is, when I look back sometimes, and I will say daunting because I didn't know for years, you know, I just thought it was a normal upbringing and everybody else's story was, whereas now I've been able to work through that, I actually can say thank you to, you know, different people. You know, one woman who talked to me about self-respect and what it meant, which was her way of boundaries. You know, self-respect is something that we can give away so easily.
Yeah.
But if we want to keep it, we have a choice. And when she told me this conversation, it was a real adult conversation. She spoke to me. And at the time, it scared me what she was saying. But in all fairness, it also empowered me. And now I look back and I think, I'd love to go back and say thank you to her, because she gave me permission to say no.
What was the learning? What was the conversation?
Well, it was actually over boys, because
ironically,
I came back with a love bite on my neck. And she explained, she said about self-respect, and this is the adult and this is the child.
Yeah.
She said adults give love bites during the height of passion. Well, for me, I got this at the bus stop. And for me, I was proud of that because it was normal.
Yeah.
What she didn't know was what was going on. She didn't know about the abuse. But because she explained to me about respect and self-respect and that, I had a choice. And she talked to me about relationship, a healthy relationship between sex and making love.
Yeah.
I then realized what was happening in a boundary that was being crashed, and that I did have a choice. I was being sexually abused.
Right.
And with that knowledge, I was actually able to, the next time, just say no.
Oh, wow.
And I say just say no. I didn't shout. I didn't scream. I quietly said no. And it stopped. And I dealt with the consequences after that. So anyone listening, I hope I haven't triggered you, but we said that we'd be honest in our conversation.
Yeah.
And that's
There's
what I want to say.
Going on in that conversation, isn't there? Like, you know, what is sex? What is love? What is abuse? And maybe we need to start discussing that in a future podcast, because a lot of people struggle with all of that. I know I do, personally. And I also find it quite triggering and quite a taboo and quite a shameful topic to talk about. So
Absolutely.
we wanted to obviously start these podcasts off softly before we get into real insightful and deep and triggering stuff. So that will be coming, guys. So And I
And it
know a
will
lot of
be.
people have requested that as well. They've requested us to actually talk about that.
We've had quite a few requests, and also other people that want to join us as well, some guests, which will really help, because I don't know about you, Chris, for me, being able to listen to conversations like this that we didn't have growing up. You know, even some people say, well, how young would you allow a young person to listen to? Well, I wish I was 10 and I could hear this conversation. Which sounds shocking, but it's more shocking for those 10-year-olds that have no support, that are going through this.
That's going through this, and they don't have any knowledge that it's not normal, and that if they were able to speak up, that it could be stopped.
Yeah.
Right. So how would you like to round off this podcast about boundaries then? How would you, I've heard what you've said, but how would you summarize what you've said so that someone could learn how to put a boundary in for themselves?
Okay. Well, a little tool, a tool that I use myself and I have used. So post notes, post-its, whatever works. I've got one that when I was really learning about my boundaries full time, and it says, what does Beverley want? And I put 3 kisses under it. And I put my name in it as the third person, so that if I was in a situation and somebody said, do you want to do this? Or something was happening, it felt wrong, I could get that out and look at it and think, what does Beverley want?
Right.
And let's give a light-hearted one. Been invited to go to a family event, okay? A family event which has got lots of dynamics going on. So the first thing as well, do I want to go or don't I? Yes, I do want to go. However, there are things about that event that will make me feel uncomfortable. Okay. So I do want to go. So what do I need to put in place that will ensure that I'm comfortable? You know, who am I going with? How long will I be there? Where will I be before and afterwards? And think about self-care. So what does Beverley want? And I put 3 kisses, and that's something I still have today around me. And mentally I use that.
So even when you get to an event, if there's a dynamic that doesn't sit comfortable, it's always coming back to that question, what does Beverley want right now?
Because
do I want to stay? Do I want to speak to that person? No. Do I want to leave? And then you've always got choice around that, isn't it?
Because you can be at an event that you've been really looking forward to going to. And everything's great. So for instance, I know when I go to a theatre, I don't want to sit right in the middle of a whole of all the seats, because I don't feel comfortable. Now, sometimes if somebody else has got the tickets, I will always ask, where are the seats generally? But then I have taken myself out before. I still want to see the show, but I've stood at the back and watched the show. Not ruined it for anyone else. But I've made sure that I'm comfortable. But what about you, Chris? What's one thing that you do with regards to your boundaries?
It's just, I think, just recognizing that it's a way of keeping myself safe, protected, and keeps my self-care intact. So like making sure, for example, a Wednesday afternoon, that there's nothing else booked in, that I don't commit to anything, and I just leave those hours that I need to do whatever it is I want to do. Whatever I need. And it changes week to week depending on what's going on.
And so you're considering your boundaries. Well, thank you very much, Chris, because we always try to stick to 30 minutes as much as possible and put as much in as possible. So if anybody's got any questions
or comments,
please comment in the box below or contact us, and our contact details are there as well. And again, you heard that we said about people who are contacting us about things they wanted to speak about. So again, please let us know if there's something you'd like us to speak about. And if you would like to be a guest and come and join us for 30 minutes for a conversation about a certain subject, we'd love you to invite you to be there as well.
Lovely. Thank you, Beverley. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for joining our Breaking the Cycle Two Step Forward podcast. See you next time.